From MNT-EC, the Micro Nanotechnology Education Center, and JATE, the Journal of Advanced Technological Education, this is the JATE Writer Studio. In each session, we'll have a guided conversation with a published author. We highlight authors who publish articles in peer-reviewed journals like the JATE, so they can share their story and writing process with you. We want to give authors a voice to share their tips and tricks about how to write a peer-reviewed journal article. Today, I'm pleased to introduce Ms. Victoria Ferrell. Victoria is a program coordinator for cyber and system security at Forsyth Technical Community College. Today, we'll discuss Victoria's article in JATE titled K-12 Educational Cybersecurity Scaling Program, designed to meet industry needs. Victoria, welcome and thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Good, good. All right, so Victoria, before we talk about writing and your JAT article, I'd like to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. Describe where you live and work, and talk a little bit about your background.
Okay, sure. So I currently live in Kernersville, North Carolina, and I work at, as you said, Forsyth Technical Community College. My background consists of over 20 years of educational experience and IT experience, anything from IT support to being a webmaster to cybersecurity.
Okay. All right. Very nice. Very nice. All right. So very briefly, describe the article that we're discussing today. Just need a couple of sentences, and we'll talk more in detail about the article here in a little bit.
Yes, so our article was actually based on the Cyber Fellows grant project that was started in 2021. So this grant had a couple goals. It aimed to increase the number of cybersecurity professionals, but also improve like the expertise of our cybersecurity faculty at the high school and post-secondary levels as well.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So what is your writing background? Where did you learn how to write peer-reviewed journal articles?
Okay, so I actually, this was my, I would say, second article, only one published. The first article that I wrote was actually in college when I was getting my master's. I had to write a technical paper, so that was my first effort. But this was the real deal. This was my first actual published article.
Okay, all right. So how did you come up with the idea for this article?
So a fellow colleague and I we're working on this grant project together. You may know him, Tony Brown.
Full disclosure, that would be me.
Yes, yes. Yes, your host is I was a co-author with your host. So yeah, we were working on this grant project together, and were approached by JATE, about what we were doing. And, it was such a great, successful project that we decided, yes, we do want to write this up and share it with everyone.
Okay. All right. So, let's see. With this article, you did have a co-author again, but in your future articles, if you can't find any co-authors, can you go about writing this article by yourself? And also with your co-author, how did he help contribute to writing this paper? So it's a two-part question.
Perfect. So if you don't have a co-author, one of the things that was mentioned in part of the JATE Connect that we were a part of, in going through this process, this writing process, we can have students help us or be co-authors with our papers. So there's probably going to be students involved in whatever project you're working on. So students are an option as co-authors for the article if you're unable to find, another faculty member or, someone else to write it with you. but luckily I had a co-author, and it made the process a lot more fun. We were able to bounce ideas off of each other. There was some accountability because, we would, keep each other reminded of deadlines. We would also be able to proofread what each other had written. So breaking up the article into parts was helpful. And then, you would work on you would work on a section, I would work on a section, and then we would, switch it and read it, and make it better, and but be positive about it, because the message that we were wanting to get out there, we want it to be as clear and as easy to follow as possible. So helping each other out with that goal in mind was helpful as well.
Okay. All right. So when we were first deciding to write this article, what did you do first once we decided we wanted to write this article?
So luckily, like I said, we were part of the JATE Connect pilot program, and we actually met as a group in July at a high tech conference. And at that meeting, we met with our editor for the first time. So at that first meeting, the three of us sat down and we discussed, our initial thought of, this writing the article based on this project. And then we sort of brainstormed, okay, do we have enough data, to add to this article? Do we have enough information recorded? Do we have enough stats? Do we have enough of a story to tell? So that was the first thing that we had to figure out. And luckily we did. We had enough. After talking about it, we were able to determine that, yes, this is going to be the topic for our paper.
Yep. Just to add on to that, especially with the data collection, normally with these grants, you also have an evaluator, and hopefully they'll write you some type of evaluation that'll help you keep track with your grant throughout the different quarters. So you can also use that data to help with your art, help write your article as well. Okay. All right. So sometimes writers feel like they don't have enough data. They don't have enough participants, enough experience, or enough time. How did you know you had enough to start writing this article?
So once we decided the topic was a good topic, we actually sat down together and created an outline. And it was just a Google. We had a shared Google Drive first, where we could just put all the resources that we wanted to use. But in that outline, that was the most helpful tool starting out. So we basically, had a slide for each of the areas of the paper. For example, the problem statement, we had a slide, and our editor did a great job of leading us off. She, would put on there, okay, what's your problem? What inspired you to start this grant? So that part was helpful. And the same thing was done for the introduction. Okay, how are we addressing this problem? And the next piece, okay, for our methodology, how are others going to replicate this? And then, our discussion, what made this successful? What lessons did we learn? And then the conclusion, how is this grant gonna support other people, writing grants? So having that initial outline was golden, because that gave us that starting off point to it had that framework, so that when you started writing your section, you knew what direction that you were trying to go.
Right, right.
And
And
then
it's
I
all
would say also, in addition to that, what was also helpful was creating meetings, Teams meetings, and setting the deadlines ahead of time. We met every 2 weeks formally to discuss or to have a certain part of the paper done, and then we would turn that into our editor and get feedback, and then within those 2 weeks, revise, edit, and be able to send that back again. So having those dates already lined up was really helpful as well, because it really helped keep us on track.
Yep, yep. And also, if I may add, having some other resources, excuse me, like different articles that not necessarily are like your grant, but somewhat lead up to the creation of your grant, or other articles that are like your grant, that's helpful as well because you can always use that as a reference in your articles. All right.
Absolutely. That's one of the things she suggested to us was we need to go out there and look at other articles first so we can
Mhm.
get an idea of what it looks like.
Right. Right.
Perfect.
Okay, so the next question is going to be multiple parts. The main question is, how do you write peer-reviewed journal articles? Do you write them top to bottom, or do you try and do one section, then another, but not necessarily in any order? So how do you write your articles?
So what we did was first after reading some other articles, you kind of get an idea of what the sections look like. But we actually started with the not the abstract, which is at the beginning of the paper. We started with the introduction.
Mhm.
So we went through the paper in that order: introduction, the method, the discussion, and the conclusion, and then wrote the abstract at the end because the abstract has to capture everything that you talked about in your paper. And if you don't have all the pieces in there, it's kind of pointless to write the abstract first. So yeah, so that was the order we created the paper in.
Okay, all right. How long did it take you to write this paper?
Okay, so we formally started in July. And then we had to have it submitted by, let's see, we met in January. So I think it was January. So 6 months.
Mhm.
I think it was
Okay,
about 6 months.
okay,
Mhm.
all right. So, when you're writing your paper, what is your process? What process works best for you in completing this paper and getting it published, getting it reviewed and published? Mm.
So I think the having the a relationship with your editor is really important because you have to be able to communicate and get your parts done on time to get the feedback in time. Um, so another piece that we were able to do was the mini mock reviews when we met in January um, at the JATE Connect meeting. Getting to do a mini mock review of another paper, and then receiving seeing what it looks like to receive feedback or give feedback. So you're basically swapping papers with another group that's writing an article.
Mhm.
So seeing what that feels like to get the feedback, I think was really important. And understanding that everyone has the same goal of, being constructive, trying to give you feedback to make it better, to make it sound better, to make it clearer, so that what you're putting out there is going to be replicable by someone else that wants to do something similar.
Okay, okay. So, how did you find references to include in your paper?
So we were able to use some of the references from the original grant when it was written. We also used some of the North Carolina Department of Information Technology as a resource. Also, we used some data and statistics from some cybersecurity websites like Cyberseek when we were talking about the number of jobs available um, and things like that. And then we reference, of course, some of our um, resources that we used in our project with our teachers as well.
Okay, all right. So we have a question in the chat. Having done the mini mock review, how did the actual review process work for you? Were there any real surprises in the blind review responses?
No, I really don't feel like there were any big surprises. I think the mini mock review, because we were able to actually um, do a couple of papers at that time, and so it was helpful to get or to read papers that were not this on the same subject or the same program area. They were very different papers. So having that perspective, I think, was helpful. So it helps to kind of open your mind and think about things from the point of, okay, if I don't know anything about your topic, how do I know what this acronym stands for? Or how do I know what that process actually looks like? So doing that, we were able to go back and really critique our own paper first. And so I feel like we got the majority of the maybe misunderstandings or confusions if there were, because I know there was one part that we really had to rework when we were
Mhm.
talking, kind of going back and forth between talking about our student recruitment and our cyber fellows program. We had to clarify those two in our minds. It all made sense, but then when somebody else looks at it, they say, okay, well, that doesn't, we don't really understand the flow here. So we had to go back and redo that flow, and that was really helpful. So yeah, having the mock interview 100% helps to understand also where your editor's coming from and when they ask questions.
Right, right. And to add, with the mock interviews, we had our original reviewer, or excuse me, our original mentor. Then during the during the winter session, we had another mentor because ours couldn't make it. Then we had it reviewed, I believe, through two or three other people, and everybody had a difference of opinion on how everything was worded and whatnot.
Yes.
So we got past the majority of the hurdles at the mock interview in January. So when it came to the blind review process, it was fairly easy. Most of the
Mhm,
grammatical errors had been
mhm,
taken care of, and the blind interview was, or excuse me, the blind review process was mostly, how does this sound? How does it
yeah,
flow? Does this flow
mhm,
correctly? Because I believe we had to change one paragraph or switch it from the top to the bottom so it flowed more correctly. But otherwise,
yes,
it was pretty easy. Yeah.
yes,
All
and
right.
and and we were happy to have, who else wants to look at our paper? Please give us feedback.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So, what was the manuscript submission process like for you? What documents did you need to upload?
So we actually had a submission checklist, which was very helpful. And at the meeting that we were at in January, we went through that submission process. So we had to up. The short answer is we had to upload our cover letter and our paper. Um, but before we did that, there were a number of items that we had to double check in our paper. Formatting was the biggest one, because the formatting is extremely important. And so that we spent a lot of time on formatting. And then the ethical guide, as far as you want to make sure that everything you're submitting has been assessed, for accuracy, that you've referenced everyone. And then, oh gosh, there was a whole list there, and it was wonderful to have that. So the support from the JATE community really helps, because they spelled it all out. They said, all right, here's what you need to do. Here's where you need to go. Submit these two things for us, and then we're good to go.
Yep. So there was also a process where we had to submit graphics. So we had graphics in the article, but we also had to have separate graphics, whether it be from a PowerPoint presentation, whether it be from Excel, or whether it be from Microsoft Word or any type of charts. We needed that as well. So when they actually published the book for the articles, they actually had the master graphics that they could attach to it, and they could manipulate that however they needed to.
High resolution, right?
Correct,
Yeah,
correct. Definitely
yeah,
high
so that was the
resolution.
third piece to submit, would be
Mhm.
those
Yep. So
graphic.
did you have any issues with submitting those high resolution images or graphics?
I don't
If you
remember
can
that we
remember.
did. I think maybe there might have been one that we had to resubmit.
Mhm.
But I feel like that was pretty easy.
Yep. Absolutely, absolutely. And JATE actually, like you were saying, they have a template that you can use, or a checklist that goes down through all the steps on how to submit everything for your articles. So it was very helpful. Mm.
Yes,
All
and
right.
also having a template of a paper, just with so you can see what the headings look like, you can see what the spacing looks like. So they give you that template. So, oh, one other piece I do want to point out is the fact that we didn't just start writing our paper in the template. We wrote our paper in just a document so that we could just mess around with and not worry about the formatting. So once we had all of our wording right, we had the article correctly written, then we plugged everything in except for the graphics. We plugged everything into the template, so that didn't, because you can easily mess up a template, right? So you don't want to do that right out the gate. So that was helpful to do that last.
All right. So just a few more questions. What was the peer review process like? How did reading the reviews make you feel? And what did you do once you received those reviews? So this will be the blind review that we had towards the end.
Yeah, I just remember being so excited that we actually got to that point that I was just like, okay, yes, let's change whatever we have to do because we're so close to being published. So that process I felt was very, encouraging. I felt like the feedback that we got was um, it was accurate. It was good feedback. It it was minimal because we had done so much work up until that point. So it was welcomed, and I think we just pretty much immediately went to the article and changed a few things, and we were good to go.
Good, good. All right. Just one more question for you. What advice would you give to new writers who are starting their first peer-reviewed journal article?
So I think it's important for folks to realize the importance and the impact of what you're doing on your campuses can have to other people, to other students, to other faculty. You're doing some amazing things. And if we don't share what we're doing, we're actually just doing a disservice to others because there's great ideas out there. And if we make this information available to other faculty, to other professionals, and then they can replicate it, that just enhances the entire community as a whole.
All right. Well, we thank you for that. Do you have any questions for us?
I'm ready to write another article.
That sounds good.
I
That
am.
sounds good. Yeah.
I'm not done with the project yet. I'm not at a point where I can write it, but I'm ready.
All right.
Right, Jen?
Yeah, when do
When?
yeah, the
I
comment
don't
is
know.
when do you think you'll be submitting?
I might be ready to submit or to write it by the summer. So maybe in the fall.
Yeah. All right. So from MNTech, the Micro Nanotechnology Education Center, and JATE, the Journal of Advanced Technological Education, we would like to thank you, Ms. Victoria Ferrell, for joining us at the JATE Writer Studio. We will talk to you all in February of 2025. You all have a good day.